Hi, I'm Samantha Bryant. I write the Menopausal Superhero series, but today I'm here to talk about anthologies. Personally, I love writing for anthologies for a lot of different reasons. It gives me an opportunity to play in new areas, try new genres, try new styles, without the commitment that it takes when I decide I'm going to write a whole book about something. And they give me great opportunities to network with other authors and learn lots of things about how the business works. So I'm going to show you some of the anthologies that I've been published in. What I consider my professional writing career started in 2014 when I had a story printed in this one, Selfies from the End of the World. This one's from the Mad Scientist Journal. You can see the subtitle here, Historical Accounts of the Apocalypse. So the call for this one, which I saw as just a cold call, like I saw it posted somewhere and I thought, that sounds interesting. Let me try writing a story for it. And the story I wrote is called Smokescreen. The call said basically they want first-person stories told from the end of the world. So somebody who's there when the world ends telling a story of how it went. So in my story, Smokescreen, there's a mad scientist who accidentally may have destroyed the world. Sorry, guys. So this is actually, I count as my first professional publication because this one came out a few months before my first novel. So even though my first novel had been contracted, this one got released first. So this one has a special place in my heart for that. And also because it has this fantastic cover. I love this cover art. Then after that, some of the anthologies I was involved in were more about like cross-promotion, trying to connect with a wider readership for my work. So my publisher at the time was Curiosity Quills. It's a company that's now defunct, and you can read about that on my blog if you want to know what happened. But this anthology is one they put out. It's called Indomitable 10. And I was invited to write for it, which was such a little boost, right? Such a little ego boost, like, hey, you should write for this. And it was like a guaranteed in, which is lovely. But 10 writers who are fairly well known within the superhero niche of fantasy and science fiction were invited to write novellas for this one. Mine is called Friend or Foe. And Friend or Foe is a story that's had quite a little publication life because after its appearance in here, it also appeared in a collection of short stories called Friend or Foe and Other Stories, which you can no longer get, unfortunately, because, like I said, Curiosity Quills is defunct. And after I got my rights back, my new publisher, Falstaff Books, published Friend or Foe as a novella and as part of a collection of short works called Agents of Change. So it's a story that fits between my first two novels, and I really liked getting to the opportunity to be included among such august company. And I don't know for sure if it led to me having other readers that I wouldn't have had otherwise. That's the thing, is it's not like every reviewer says, I found this author, buy this, right? You don't know how people find your work. But that's the hope when you participate in these kinds of projects, is that somebody who bought the book because maybe they were already a Drew Hayes fan, for example, will also read your story and then go, oh, I liked that. Let's go see what else they wrote. So that's also part of why I participated in these books. So these are from the Pen and Cape Society, which is an organization for people who write superhero fiction. And they're a series. They did The Good Fight 1 and 2, but that happened before I was writing superheroes, so I didn't submit or participate in those. But this is 3 and 4. The Good Fight 3 was called Sidekicks. I have a story in this one that's called Underestimated, and it features Susie, who's one of the non-powered characters in the Menopausal Superhero series. I really wanted to write a story about a sidekick who doesn't need rescuing. And Susie not only doesn't need rescuing, often she's the one rescuing other people, powers or not. And then when they did The Good Fight 4, I decided to participate in that one too. This one's called Homefront, because the idea was that these were all stories of superheroes in their home lives and their more domestic aspects of lives. So my story included in this one is Coming Out as Lionel, which is also available when you subscribe to my newsletter as a freebie, or you can read it as part of the Through Thick and Thin collection or the Agents of Change collection from Falstaff Books. But the gist of it is that poor Lionel Fuerte Alvarez, must explain to his best friend who he is. And if you read the first chapter of Going Through the Change, you'll understand that that is extra complicated. Then relatedly, there's 2 other anthologies here that I participated in just as a way to connect with some new writers. So this one, Christmas Lights 9, you can see it's number 9, right? So they've done 9 of these. They're doing a 10th one this year, but I didn't get to participate. I just couldn't spare the time from my other projects. But it's a charity anthology, so I didn't get paid or anything, but my story in here helped sell the book and helped raise some funds for a worthy cause, and also gave me a networking opportunity and a chance to maybe find some new audience. You know, most of the stories in here are not superhero, but mine is. It's called Oh Scaly Night and features our friend Patricia, the lizard woman of Springfield, indulging in her version of being Santa Claus, which may not be quite what you're expecting. And then this anthology, Love Unlimited, may not look like the kind of thing you'd find my work in. I mean, it definitely looks very romancy, right? But the story I have in here is a romance superhero story. It's one of the fun things about writing superhero is that superhero is kind of like steampunk, where it's kind of a setting more than a genre. And so you can write superhero stories of various types, like superhero mysteries, superhero adventures, superhero romance. So my story in here is called Fly Girl's Second Chance, which is a story for Jessica, who becomes known as Fly Girl when she establishes her superhero life and is getting a chance to marry again. So the story has her indulging in some super heroics and at the same time being worried about starting her new life and the trepidation that comes with taking a second chance like that. And it's another story that's had life elsewhere. It's also in the Through Thick and Thin collection and the Agents of Change collection. So those are the ones I did that were really directly like tie-ins to my superhero work. And I like that. I like that opportunity to get to use a small work to maybe draw some readers in who then may decide to read my longer works, my novels. But sometimes what I like about writing for anthologies is the chance to just write something else altogether. And writing a novel is a long commitment. Writing a novel for me is a year-long commitment at the least, sometimes more like a year and a half, because I write part-time alongside a teaching job and managing a household and family. So these 2 books are ones that I put together with my partners in my critique group. And we did these partly to teach ourselves about the process, because self-publishing is definitely on the docket, is something that some of us are considering for some of our projects, and some of us have already done, and others of us just want to learn about it to see if it's right for us. So for the 7-story house, we found this picture of a house. A member of our group took the picture, and then we all agreed to write a story set in this house. So it's the 7-story house because there were 7 of us who participated. My story in this one is a retelling of Goldilocks, which is called ever so cleverly Goldilocks. But it's set in a much more contemporary and realistic setting and plays around with the fact that we never really understand what went on with Goldilocks, right? Who is this girl who just shows up and enters somebody's house and takes off again at the end? She's kind of a mysterious figure. So I enjoyed playing in that fairy tale retelling. And then Beyond the Pain was another story, another anthology put together by mostly the same group of writers. You know, with writing groups, people come in and people go out. So not exactly the same, but the same group. And our premise for this one was that everybody's story was going to start with the same first line. And the first line is, "There was something not quite right about the window." Now the stories have huge variety, you know, because that was all the requirement was, is that they all start with that first line. My story in here is sort of a Southern Gothic, weird tale kind of thing. It was called Ashes. Has some shades of Dorian Gray in there and a little bit of like Tales from the Dark Side kind of feel. So definitely something that was different for me and a lot of fun to write and let me indulge the darker side. Because while I love writing my menopausal superheroes series and I hope to continue doing so for a long time, I also tend to like to play around in some darker playgrounds, more towards horror and creepy stuff. And so this was a great opportunity to do that. And I learned a lot about indie publishing by putting these together with my friends. We learned about cover art, and we learned about ISBNs, and we learned about layout software, and all kinds of things. It was a useful way to learn how to do it. None of us had any expectations that we would make any money off of it. I think I've probably bought myself a few cups of coffee off of that, and that's it. Then this one was fun. This is Tracing the Trails, a constant reader's reflections on the work of Stephen King by my friend Chad A. Clark. So Chad and I don't know each other in real life, but we are online writing friends. We've been a part of a couple of things together, including the Magic Spreadsheet, which is a tool that I used when I was trying to develop some discipline in my writing life to make sure that I wrote often enough. So Chad had a project where he read everything by Stephen King and wrote about it, basically like a little bit of nonfiction response criticism about every one of the books. And he invited some of his other friends who also love Stephen King to contribute to the book, and I contributed an article that was about the story collection Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which has one of my favorite Stephen King stories of all times in it, called Dolan's Cadillac. So you can read my nonfiction in here, which was kind of fun. Made me feel scholarly to have my nonfiction published like that. And then more recently, I've been having some, I guess you would call them maybe more professional opportunities, where I got the chance to be published in a collection and get paid for it. And I've made anywhere from a token fee of like $15 to $20 to a more professional fee of $200 to $300 for some of these works. So this one, Off the Beaten Path 3, is a collection of scary stories that came out from Perspective Press. And I wrote what I call my daylight ghost story in this one. This is a story called The Girl in the Pool, which may not sound like a name of a ghost story, but I assure you it is. And then this one, Dead Man Humor, 13 Fears of a Clown. This was put together by an online writing friend of mine, Dave Higgins, and he put out a call for stories about the things that scare clowns, because so many people are afraid of clowns. And that was another case, kind of like the first anthology I was in, where I just thought, oh, what an interesting premise. I really want to write something for that one. And so I created a new story, which was called The Glee Woman. Oh goodness, I forgot what I named the town. Just a second. The Glee Woman of Preservation. And it follows a woman into her retirement who notices that her husband is behaving very strangely and decides to investigate. She thinks at first that maybe it's going to turn out to be something like he's having a love affair, but it turns out to be something a little darker than that and leads to a new endeavor for herself. So The Glee Woman of Preservation in this collection, Dead Man Humor, 13 Fears of a Clown. Dave is putting out another anthology here pretty soon, and I'll have a story in that one too, and I'm looking forward to that. They're all cosmic horror stories. Then my most recent ones, this one is Stories We Tell After Midnight, Volume 2. This one came from Crone Girls Press. This just came out in October, and I would describe this one as like traditional scary stories, like not anything that's making fun of or flipping tropes, but just our straightforward scary stories like the kinds you might remember from your youth. And my story in here is called The Cleaning Woman. And the cleaning woman works for, how can I tell you? I can't tell you too much without spoiling the story, but she works for a person that means she has some unusual kind of messes to clean up. And she's not entirely happy about it. And I really enjoyed playing with that idea of servitude to supernatural and terrifying beings. It was kind of like Downton Abbey, except for that the boss is more towards Dracula or Victor Frankenstein than like the rich people in that story. And then My most recent anthology publication is one I was super excited about. This is Slay, Stories of the Vampire Noir, edited by Nicole Givens-Kurtz. She's the owner of Mocha Memoirs Press, which is the press that put this out. And that was another case where I saw the anthology call and I thought, oh, I want to do this. And what it wanted was vampire stories that are all set in the African diaspora, meaning the characters needed to be African, or the settings needed to be African. It was open to vampires or vampire slayers. There's quite a range of stories in here, including some pretty big names in vampire. And I had never written a vampire story before, but when I looked at this call, I had this idea. That's how it goes sometimes, right? My story is called His Destroyer, and it's a telling of the Passover story, or a story of the 10th of the 10 plagues of Egypt, when his destroyer is sent to kill the first sons of Egypt, and explores the idea of who exactly that destroyer was. And it's a story that really gave me the chills to write, and that's an exciting thing when you can kind of thrill yourself with your own writing. So I guess when I think about anthologies, I think about things that I wouldn't have written otherwise, right? Like, you know, my story in here, not something I would have written necessarily if I hadn't seen that call and thought, what a neat idea. And the same with Dead Man Humor and with Slay, right? That looking at anthology calls can be a way to inspire yourself to try something new in your writing. And you may surprise yourself and get the chance to play around in something new. They can also be a way to help publicize work you've already done, right? If you can write short pieces that connect into your universe or whatever your other work is, then you might attract some new readers who will then go back and look at your work. Things like these Pen and Cape anthologies and the Indomitable 10 that I talked about, and also these two anthologies which weren't necessarily superhero but still had room for my superhero story in there, and hopefully attracted me some new readers. And then there's just the chance to play around with something new, right? You know, a thing is, when you're writing a series, most writers have more than one idea. No matter how much you love your idea, you want to get to play around with some other ideas too. And short fiction is a great opportunity for that. And with short fiction, I got to write things like Southern Gothic and fairy tale and ghost and nonfiction and vampire and horror, you know, all kinds of things. And that was a great delight. So there's my thoughts on why a person might want to write for anthologies, or at least why I've done it. I don't think it's a way that you're going to get rich. I don't think it's a way that you're going to get famous, but it can be a way to really indulge yourself creatively, build some connections, because, you know, some of these things have led to other collections for me. Like, you know, having worked with people in one anthology can lead to another opportunity, so it can be a career builder in that sense, and maybe to collect some readers back for your other work. So for all of these reasons, I highly recommend it. Plus, it's just fun.